When we start thinking about time, we often take it for granted, something we can measure precisely with clocks and calendars. But how did it all begin? Why did people start measuring time? And how did it impact their lives? Let's travel back to ancient times when our ancestors first began to recognize the importance of time. It all started with humans being part of nature, noticing its constant rhythms. The cycle of day and night, the changing seasons and animal migrations were all tied to processes vital for survival. In prehistoric times, people didn't understand time the way we do today. For them, time was something they felt through the events around them. The rising and setting sun, shadows shifting across the ground, these were the first markers that helped people distinguish day from night. The day-night cycle was the primary way of measuring time. For early humans, day and night were the key milestones that shaped their daily activities. During the day, they hunted and gathered food. At night, they rested, sheltered from predators and cold. These cycles were so critical that they influenced many aspects of their lives. But nature provided more than just day and night. It offered the changing seasons and animal migrations, which became part of a primitive calendar. Each season held its own significance for our ancient ancestors. Summer brought abundant food, while winter threatened survival. This made it clear how important it was to understand and track time accurately. Seasons dictated when to harvest crops, prepare for winter, or go hunting or fishing. Observing animal migrations like the movement of mammoth herds was also tied to key natural events. Seasonality was so central to human life that it became a core part of their culture. Major events, such as festivals, rituals, and even wars, were tied to specific times of the year. This understanding of nature's cycles allowed people to survive and avoid mistakes that could lead to hunger or disaster. The rhythms of day and night, seasons and migrations became the foundation for perceiving time. With the development of agriculture, the need for precise time tracking became even more apparent. When humans began cultivating plants and domesticating animals, they could no longer rely solely on intuitive perceptions of natural cycles. They had to account not only for seasons but also for specific moments, like the time for planting or harvesting. Farming demanded a clear understanding of time: when to sow, when to harvest, when to expect rains. These questions were critical for survival. Simple observations of the sun or moon were no longer enough. More accurate methods of measuring time were needed to predict weather patterns and determine the best times for planting or harvesting. This period also brought up issues related to organizing work and labor within tribes. People realized that the efficiency of their work depended on how accurately they could track time, whether for building homes or hunting. Clear planning, task allocation by time, and coordination became the basis for societal development. Throughout this time, humans continued to refine their early sense of time through nature. Initially, this involved simple observations of the sun, shadows, and stars. The solar cycle was the most obvious guide. The sun's morning rise, its zenith, and its setting were essentially the first calendar humans used. Sundials, a simple device for tracking the sun's position in the sky, became an essential tool for early farmers. Shadow observations also provided insight into the time of day. This was a primitive way of perceiving time through natural clocks dependent on sunlight. Stars played a role too. At night, they served as guiding points, helping people navigate in the dark and estimate time when the sun wasn't visible. This was especially important for those hunting or traveling long distances at night. Time became critical for human survival. The ability to accurately perceive and use time helped avoid hunger, predator encounters, and other dangers. Predicting seasonal changes, preparing for cold or rain, was essential for survival. Moreover, understanding time became not just a practical necessity, but also a factor in social organization. Tribes that could coordinate their actions based on time, such as for collective hunts, could use resources more effectively and ensure their survival. But time wasn't only used practically for survival, it also became a key element of spiritual life. Early rituals were often tied to natural cycles. Seasonal festivals, fertility rites, and prayers for rain or prosperity were linked to specific moments, like solstices and equinoxes. With each new natural cycle, whether the start of a season or a lunar phase, people held rituals to connect with nature's forces, give thanks for harvests, or seek help for the future. These rituals also served as a way to strengthen social bonds within tribes. One of the earliest ways to record time cycles was through calendars. Lunar calendars, developed in ancient times, helped people track the moon's phases and align them with agricultural cycles. Cave paintings often depicted animals, plants, and stars, offering clues about how time was linked to nature. One of the most famous archaeological examples is Stonehenge, a stone circle believed to have been used for observing astronomical events. Such structures served as calendars, helping people determine important dates for planting, harvesting, or rituals. Time was not just practical but also mythological. Myths, legends, and religious stories often tied specific moments to divine forces or fate. In ancient cultures, time was often seen as cyclical, linked to life and death, birth and destruction. Myths about time cycles, like the transmigration of souls or the end of the world, taught people the importance of remembering time and how it could shape human destinies. Time was more than just planets and seasons. It was a deeper concept reflecting humanity's perception of life's cyclical nature. Time became part of philosophy, a subject for contemplating the meaning of life, its beginning and its end. While early humans didn't have precise clocks or calendars, their understanding of time as something significant and guiding laid the foundation for the further development of human culture. Throughout human history, measuring time has always been an integral part of daily life. Across different eras and cultures, various methods of tracking time evolved, but one of the earliest and most significant tools was the sundial. This device allowed people to orient themselves more precisely in time and laid the groundwork for future advancements in astronomy and mechanics. The simplest and earliest form of a sundial was essentially a gnomon, a vertical stick that cast a shadow. This tool was used from ancient times to determine the time of day based on the shadow's position. The gnomon was basic, a vertical object whose shadow shifted depending on the time of day. This straightforward measurement allowed ancient people to distinguish between day and night and estimate how much time had passed since sunrise or sunset. Though far from precise, the gnomon served as an initial guide for timekeeping. It's still used today, but in ancient times it was often the only accessible method, simple and understandable to everyone. Of course, its accuracy depended on location and weather conditions, but in the ancient world, gnomons provided a decent reference point for most people. The ancient Egyptians were among the first to refine the sundial, turning it into a more sophisticated timekeeping tool. They began using obelisks, tall stone pillars erected in public spaces. Unlike a simple gnomon, an obelisk allowed for more precise time measurements due to its height. These structures served not only as decorations, but also as vital tools for tracking time. With obelisks, the Egyptians divided the day into segments: morning, midday, and evening hours. In Egypt, they also developed a sundial system where the day was divided into 12 hours and the night into 12 periods. This system was tied to observations of the sun and moon, as well as to gods and mythological events, which influenced their calendrical practices. Obelisks weren't just for timekeeping, they also symbolized power and divine authority. Placed along rivers like the Nile, in central squares, or at temples, these stone pillars became key elements of ancient Egypt's cultural and religious heritage. The concept of sundials spread worldwide, including to ancient China and India. These regions developed their own versions of sundials for time measurement. In China, for example, sun shadow clocks, or gnomons, vertical poles fixed in the ground, were used to track time. In India, sundials were often more complex, sometimes incorporating mirrors to enhance shadow effects and improve time tracking. These cultures also saw strong connections between time measurement and religion. Sundials were used not only for practical purposes but also to determine the timing of rituals, prayers, and other religious ceremonies. One of the most significant contributions to timekeeping was the Babylonian division of the day into 24 hours. Using their base 60 number system, the Babylonians divided a circle into 360 degrees and a day into 24 hours. They also introduced 60-minute hours and 60-second minutes, forming the foundation of the time measurement system still used today. The Babylonian system greatly influenced the development of astronomy and the science of time. The 24-hour division enabled a more precise measurement system, making sundials a more effective tool for observing the movements of the sun and moon. Despite their importance and widespread use, sundials had a major drawback. Their accuracy depended on weather conditions. Clouds, rain, or variable cloud cover could make sundials unreliable. This led ancient Rome, Greece, and other regions to seek ways to improve sundial accuracy by using additional tools, such as water clocks and mechanical devices. Sundials couldn't accurately measure time at night, and their effectiveness dropped during rainy or cloudy weather. This drove humanity to search for better ways to measure time, leading to the creation of new devices and methods. Sundials held significant cultural value beyond their practical use. In ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, they became integral to urban architecture. In Egypt, obelisks serving as sundials were often placed near temples in main squares or at royal palaces. These majestic structures symbolized the ruler's power and greatness, while serving as timekeeping guides for city residents. In ancient Greece and Rome, sundials also became part of urban culture. They could be found in various settings, from public squares to private homes. Sundials were not just timekeeping tools, but also symbols of order and societal structure. In different countries, sundials became a key feature of urban spaces. In Rome, for instance, installing sundials in forums and squares was seen as an act of civility and respect for public needs. As sundials spread worldwide, the need for time standardization arose. Different regions and cities used their own timekeeping systems, leading to confusion. For example, time could be measured differently across parts of the Roman Empire, causing issues for trade, military operations, and other areas of life. The first attempt at time standardization occurred during the Roman Empire under Emperor Augustus, who introduced a unified time system for all provinces. This allowed time to be not only measured but also synchronized across a vast empire. The Greeks and Romans significantly improved sundials. In ancient Greece, their use was closely tied to advancements in philosophy and science. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle used sundials to observe celestial movements and determine precise time intervals for philosophical reflections and scientific experiments. In Rome, sundials became essential in architecture and public life, adorning squares, forums, and private homes. However, even in Rome, people recognized that sundials weren't always accurate. For more precise measurements, they began using water clocks. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle also discussed time, its nature, and its measurement. In his works, Plato explored time as part of the eternal world of ideas, while Aristotle, in his physics, sought to explain time as a measure of motion. Aristotle viewed time as dependent on movement and change, opening new avenues for scientific and philosophical exploration of time. Thus, sundials became not only practical tools for measuring time, but also subjects of philosophical inquiry. Across cultures and civilizations, people sought not only to measure time but also to understand its essence. In ancient times, when sundials and sand clocks weren't always reliable, people began searching for new ways to measure time. One such innovation was the water clock, or clepsydra, a device based on the gradual filling or emptying of vessels with water. This ingenious method significantly improved timekeeping accuracy and marked an important step in the development of science and technology, playing a key role in the daily lives of many civilizations. The clepsydra operated on a simple yet brilliant principle. Water gradually filled a vessel, and its level indicated the passage of time. In some designs, water flowed out of a vessel through a small hole at a constant rate, allowing the water level to serve as a time marker. In other versions, water entered a vessel, and when it reached a certain level, it would flow out through another opening. Crucially, these clocks worked in any condition, unlike sundials, which were ineffective at night or in cloudy weather. This simple yet revolutionary mechanism allowed people to track time accurately, even when sundials failed due to clouds or darkness. It was one of the first steps toward mechanical precision in timekeeping, independent of sunlight. The advent of such devices was a major technological milestone, as they not only improved measurement accuracy, but also enabled their use in diverse fields, from astronomical observations to courts and theatrical performances. The Egyptians, like many ancient civilizations, used water clocks in their daily lives. In Egypt, they were often employed in temples and astronomical observatories to determine the timing of prayers or the start of ceremonies. For instance, water clocks were critical for scheduling festivals and religious rites. Their design was relatively simple: large vessels where water gradually filled a measuring section. More complex systems with multiple channels for water flow and precise markers for time tracking were also used. In Greece, water clocks were further refined, resulting in more accurate and versatile devices. The Greek scientist and inventor Philon of Byzantium described an advanced version of water clocks that used a system of multiple vessels for more precise timekeeping. These Greek water clocks featured intricate mechanisms that enabled highly accurate time measurements. They were used in astronomical and mathematical observations, as well as in public affairs, such as regulating the duration of orators' speeches and other public events. The Romans widely adopted water clocks, and over time, their designs became increasingly sophisticated. Roman craftsmen incorporated additional elements to enhance accuracy. For example, Roman water clocks often used complex systems with multiple vessels for water retention and delivery, making them more stable and precise. As water clocks grew in popularity, Roman engineers began miniaturizing their designs. This was particularly important for creating portable models that could be used in various situations, including by scholars, philosophers, and orators who needed to track time during speeches. These compact devices sometimes became personal, items that could be carried during travel or public appearances. Water clocks also found extensive use in ancient theaters for time management. In theatrical performances where precise timing was crucial for maintaining the rhythm of the show, water clocks played a vital role. They were used to measure the duration of scenes and control the timing between acts. For example, in Roman theaters, water clocks ensured the structure of performances was maintained. Complex water clock mechanisms could be synchronized with other technical devices, such as water delivery systems or smoke signals. In some cases, theaters used entire networks of water-based mechanisms to create time-dependent effects, like opening doors, raising curtains, or producing specific sound effects. This use of water clocks in theater demonstrated how technological progress could be integrated into cultural and entertainment practices. One of the most fascinating uses of water clocks in ancient Rome was their role in public speeches and legal proceedings. In Roman courts, water clocks were used to control the time allocated to each participant in a trial. This ensured that each lawyer or accuser had a strictly limited time to speak, and when the time ran out, their speech was halted. Similarly, during public speeches, Roman orators relied on water clocks to stay within established time limits, ensuring their presentations didn't drag on and adhered to public speaking standards. In this context, water clocks became a critical tool for organizing public events, balancing time for speeches with other activities. In ancient culture, water was often associated with life, the flow of time, and the inevitability of change. Water clocks, in turn, became not only a symbol of time's passage, but also a philosophical reminder of its irreversibility. Water symbolized both the process of time and its constant forward motion, which could not be stopped. Moreover, by marking the inevitable flow of time, water clocks served as a reminder of life's finitude. In this sense, they were more than just tools, they were philosophical symbols. They underscored the idea that time slips away and every moment is irretrievable. Ancient philosophers and writers often used water clocks as metaphors for the fleeting nature of life and the inevitability of aging. Beyond Europe, water clocks were widely used in Asia. In ancient China, they served various purposes, including determining the timing of prayers and ceremonies. Chinese culture developed several types of water clocks, including devices with rotating wheels and mechanisms for nighttime timekeeping. This allowed Chinese engineers to refine these devices, creating more accurate and versatile mechanisms. In China, water clocks were also used for astronomical observations and mathematical calculations. In India, water clocks were employed for similar purposes, including astronomical observations and religious ceremonies. Indian designs differed from Egyptian and Greek models but operated on the same principle. In the Islamic world, water clocks were used for scientific purposes, such as determining prayer times. Islamic scholars like Al-Jazari significantly improved water clocks, incorporating more complex mechanisms and enhancing their accuracy. These devices were used not only in astronomy and religion, but also in everyday life, such as in mathematics and engineering. As water clocks evolved, engineers introduced more sophisticated mechanisms to improve their performance. One such innovation was the use of gears and water wheels to transmit energy and control timekeeping. This greatly enhanced the accuracy and reliability of water clocks. Water wheels and gears enabled the creation of more complex and efficient mechanisms that could operate with greater precision and for longer periods than their predecessors. Further refinements included engineering solutions like pistons to regulate water levels and more efficient systems to minimize water loss. These advancements resulted in more durable and effective devices that could be used across various fields. The Middle Ages marked significant changes in how people lived and perceived time. With the rise of Christian traditions, particularly in monasteries, there was a growing need to strictly adhere to time. Time became more than a natural phenomenon. It became a critical element of spiritual practice and a foundation for organizing daily life. Monasteries became centers of spiritual and cultural life in the Middle Ages. Regularity and precision were hallmarks of monastic life, driven by the monks' commitment to religious vows, particularly obedience. Each monastery followed a strict daily schedule based on prayer, work, and meditation. The day was structured around prayer hours, with every moment subordinated to this framework. This practice, known as the daily division, was established as early as the 8th century and continued to evolve throughout the Middle Ages. Precise timing for prayers was critical, and monks had to adhere strictly to the established rhythm. Key moments of the day included prayers at dawn, noon, and evening. This strict schedule not only organized spiritual life, but also became a foundation for collaboration with scholars and astronomers who helped determine precise prayer times based on solstices, lunar cycles, and other astronomical events. Accurate timekeeping was essential for monasteries to conduct prayers. The practice of prayer hours required precise adherence to specific times throughout the day. Prayers began at designated moments, necessitating mechanisms to help monks track time accurately. Clocks as tools for timekeeping became not only technological innovations but also vital components of religious practice. Monastic life was entirely governed by a strict schedule, and the demand for time precision became especially important for prayers. Prayer hours were mandatory for both monks and lay people. Initially, these hours weren't tracked mechanically, but over time, monasteries began developing devices to show the precise time needed for prayer. To address the challenge of accurate timekeeping, monasteries adopted specialized mechanisms known as striking clocks. These devices could notify not only monks but also nearby townsfolk, as monasteries were often located on hilltops or in the centers of settlements. Monastery towers housed bells that rang to signal the start of prayers. Each bell strike was a cue for a new prayer. Striking clocks became symbols of the monastery's authority and its significance in community life. The first mechanical striking clocks appeared in European monasteries in the 11th and 12th centuries. These devices were relatively simple but allowed for synchronized timekeeping across different parts of the monastery, helping to organize the day in accordance with religious duties. Over time, monasteries began using more sophisticated timekeeping mechanisms. One such innovation was mechanical clocks with weights. These used a system of heavy weights that descended as time progressed. While this principle was known since antiquity, it was further developed in the Middle Ages. These simple mechanisms enabled monasteries to regulate clocks with high precision, ensuring synchronization with prayer hours. Such systems were widely used in Europe from the 10th to 13th centuries, often crafted by monks or skilled clockmakers with expertise in mechanics. This era marked the peak of mechanical clock development in Europe, with designs becoming increasingly complex and accurate. Monks played a pivotal role in developing mechanical clocks. In the Middle Ages, leading engineers and craftsmen often came from monasteries, where scientific knowledge, philosophy, and technology intersected with religious practice. Monks were not only keepers of knowledge but also key innovators, working on mechanisms to improve timekeeping for prayers and other church rituals. One notable monk inventor was Gerbert of Aurillac, who later became Pope Sylvester II. He worked on mechanical clocks and authored several treatises on astronomy and mechanics. Monasteries also advanced astronomical research, which improved timekeeping accuracy and enabled the development of more complex mechanisms. Monasteries became hubs where not only spiritual life but also mechanical precision was refined. The monks' contributions to engineering laid the groundwork for future advancements in timekeeping. Christianity profoundly shaped the perception of time in the Middle Ages. Time was no longer just a physical process, it became a spiritual concept. In Christian tradition, time was seen as a divine gift, a limited resource to be used for good. Time became a vital part of spiritual life, dedicated to prayer, service, and helping others. Christian teachings also introduced the idea of life's finitude. Death became a defining moment, emphasizing how individuals used their time on earth. This perception of time significantly influenced the development of precise mechanical clocks and timekeeping tools. A key aspect of time perception in the Middle Ages was the notion of time as God's gift and time as duty. Time was viewed as a divine gift, with every moment meant to serve God and society. Simultaneously, the concept of time as duty held that individuals were obligated to use their time in accordance with God's will. These ideas were reflected in monastic life, where strict schedules and regular prayers underscored the importance of every moment. With the advent of mechanical clocks, monasteries began moving away from natural time tied to sunrise, sunset, or lunar phases. Time became a more abstract concept, measured by mechanical means. This shift influenced society as a whole, as the introduction of precise clocks laid the foundation for organizing not only spiritual but also daily life. Bells in monasteries played a crucial role in time organization. Their chimes became a daily guide for people. In the Middle Ages, bells signaled not only prayer times but also daily tasks. A bell's ring was a call to action. The time has come. Thus, the development of timekeeping in the Middle Ages wasn't limited to technological advancements. The influence of monasteries, Christian traditions, and philosophy profoundly shaped the perception of time, driving further progress in clocks and timekeeping mechanisms. Mechanical tower clocks emerging in Europe in the 13th and 14th centuries were a transformative invention that reshaped the perception of time and its role in public life. Installed on city towers, these clocks symbolized the start of a new era in human civilization, where time became a critical public resource, regulating not only personal lives but also societal processes. The earliest mechanical tower clocks appeared in Europe in the 13th century, with their creation often attributed to Venetian engineer and astronomer Giovanni di Bartolomeo. However, most historians agree that such devices became widespread in major European cities in the 14th century, particularly in England, France, Italy, and beyond. Unlike earlier models like water or sundials, early mechanical clocks were far more precise and independent of weather or seasonal changes. Their mechanism relied on gear wheels and weight-driven systems, enabling accurate timekeeping. Unlike water clocks, which depended on water flow, mechanical clocks used springs and weights, offering greater independence from external conditions. These clocks were installed not only for the convenience of residents, but also to regulate time more effectively. Their primary function was to manage prayer cycles in monasteries, but over time, they served secular purposes as well. However, even with their innovative advancements, mechanical clocks faced accuracy challenges. They relied on weights, requiring periodic winding, and repeated mechanisms could lead to mechanical failures. Timekeeping errors could amount to hours or even days. Developers faced the challenge of ensuring consistent accuracy, which led to heavier, more complex components. Still, mechanical clocks were far more precise than any previous analogues. Accuracy was critical, as precise timekeeping directly impacted societal functions. The argument that clocks could help people plan their lives and conduct important events on time became a key reason for adopting tower clocks in cities. As mechanical clocks spread across major European cities, they became vital markers for entire populations. The sounds of clock strikes, bell rings, or mechanical chimes signaled time to all city residents. These sounds extended far beyond church buildings, resonating throughout the city. Tower clocks announced specific times of day, morning, noon, evening, and night, and provided signals tied to days of the week. A notable example is the bell towers, which were used not only to mark time, but also for rituals. In Paris in 1370, a tower was equipped with the first fully mechanical clock, which chimed at noon, becoming a key reference for residents. The chimes of these clocks became time markers. Citizens relied on them to synchronize their activities with the rest of society, independent of personal observations of the sun or other natural cues. Tower clocks became symbols of a city's power and wealth. These devices were a source of pride for local authorities, and their installation was often accompanied by public celebrations. Clocks on towers became architectural symbols, reflecting a city's prosperity and progress. For many cities, having a clock was not only a sign of modernity, but also an indicator of development and economic strength. Historians note that tower clocks became integral to urban landscapes, and as their popularity grew, cities began competing to install the most advanced and beautiful clocks. Cities like Florence proudly installed mechanical clocks in central, Squares emphasizing their status among other European cities, clocks became a city's calling card, attracting travelers, merchants, and scholars. The spread of tower clocks sparked a fascinating phenomenon: competition among cities to install the best and most accurate clocks. Local rulers, magistrates, and wealthy merchants sought to demonstrate their city's technological and cultural superiority. An example is the clock in Strasbourg, installed in 1352, one of the most sophisticated of its time. This mechanism was renowned not only for its technical excellence but also for displaying astronomical and calendrical data, functioning as a comprehensive astronomical model showing planetary positions, lunar phases, and more. In London, in 1288, the first mechanical clock was installed in what would later become Big Ben, eventually becoming a city symbol. It not only signaled time but also served as a hub of urban life, allowing residents to check the correct time. Tower clocks were not only technological achievements but also elements of urban architecture. Many were placed in central squares or city centers, becoming symbols of centralized authority and architectural harmony. The architecture of time was expressed in the placement of clocks on tall towers, which became dominant features of city skylines. This symbolized not only time's centrality in urban life, but also the city's role in regional, social, and political spheres. The rise of clock technology gave birth to a new profession: clockmakers. These craftsmen became vital to urban economies, responsible for installing, maintaining, and repairing tower clocks. Unlike earlier times, when clock mechanisms were crafted in monasteries or royal courts, the advent of tower clocks made clockmaking a skilled and sought-after trade. In some cities, specialized workshops emerged, and master clockmakers gained fame for their achievements. With the widespread adoption of mechanical clocks across European cities, the need for time standardization between cities arose. This was particularly important for trade, navigation, and interstate interactions. Over time, initial efforts to establish unified time standards emerged, driven by growing trade and political connections. The concept of the second emerged later, with the development of precise mechanical clocks. Initially, time units were tied to hours, minutes, and parts of the day. However, in the 15th and 16th centuries, as mechanical clocks became more advanced, the need to divide time into smaller units arose. This led to the introduction of the second, the smallest unit of time measurement, later formalized in scientific works and becoming a key element in timekeeping's evolution. Thus, mechanical tower clocks were more than convenient timekeeping devices. They were symbols of public order, authority, and cultural progress. They became essential to medieval city life, fostering a new societal perception of time as a fundamental resource for managing community life. As mechanics and technology advanced, time became more than a public schedule. It became a personal, almost intimate experience. This section explores how innovations and societal changes led to the emergence of personal clocks and transformed humanity's relationship with time. The spring mechanism was a revolutionary invention in clock history. Before its development, clocks relied on external energy sources like water or weights. In the 15th century, the spring mechanism was invented, enabling the creation of smaller, portable clocks. This was possible because a spring, when compressed and released, transmitted steady motion to the mechanism, allowing accurate timekeeping. This breakthrough was transformative. It not only gave rise to spring-driven clocks, but also changed perceptions of time. Clocks could now be carried, freeing people from reliance on large city towers or temples. Clocks became personal items, no longer requiring complex, bulky structures. The spring mechanism enabled the production of not only tabletop, but also pocket clocks, a significant step toward viewing time as a personal value. With advancements in clock mechanisms, the first household clocks appeared. Stone and wooden mechanisms were used in homes as both functional and decorative elements. In wealthy households, stone clocks were often adorned with ornate details, becoming true works of art. This was an era when even everyday household items took on symbolic meaning. In homes with such clocks, calendars were often installed alongside them to help track cyclical time. Stone clocks typically mark time throughout the day but also became symbols of domestic order and stability. In poorer households, where expensive mechanical clocks were unaffordable, simpler wooden models with basic mechanisms provided rudimentary accuracy. In 1656, Dutch scientist Christiaan Huygens invented the pendulum mechanism, which dramatically improved the accuracy of mechanical clocks. Before this, clocks often suffered from inaccuracies, but the pendulum regulated the mechanism's motion, achieving unprecedented precision. The pendulum mechanism made clocks far more stable and accurate, enabling their use not only in towers and public buildings but also in homes for personal use. Pendulum clocks, with their remarkable accuracy, became key features in the homes of the wealthy and noble. They also reinforced the link between time and social status. Time was no longer confined to public spheres. It became part of individuals' personal lives. One of the greatest achievements of 17th century mechanical engineering was the pocket watch. It was not only convenient but also a status symbol. Pocket watches reflected a shift in how time was perceived. They showed that individuals could now own time. Carried on the person, they became essential accessories for urban dwellers, particularly among the aristocracy. Pocket watches were more than just timekeeping devices. They were a statement of belonging to high society, a symbol of independence, and the ability to control and measure time. Moreover, pocket watches were often works of art, with intricately crafted details, inlaid gemstones, and ornate metalwork, emphasizing their prestige. These watches also embodied a new lifestyle, one organized and governed by strict timekeeping. A person with a pocket watch was no longer bound to nature's rhythms, like day-night cycles or seasonal changes. They could manage their day with this small device. Over time, personal clocks gained significant social significance. Initially, as mentioned, clocks were symbols of power and wealth. However, with technological advancements and the spread of pocket watches, time became more accessible. Yet, owning a clock remained a key indicator of social status. For the poor, clocks were often out of reach, symbolizing their lower status and inability to afford such luxuries. Clocks also began to shape social interactions, as public clocks like those on towers set the time for everyone. Individuals were now expected to adhere to this time to avoid being late for work or meetings. For aristocrats and wealthier individuals, personal clocks gave time an individual value. The spread of precise clocks created a societal divide between those who could afford time accuracy and those who could not. The appearance of clocks, their materials, and the complexity of their mechanisms reflected their owners' social standing. People with the most accurate and intricate clocks were part of the elite. Spring and pendulum mechanisms were accessible only to a small group, signaling advancements in technology and class distinctions. Time accuracy became a privilege for those who could afford expensive mechanisms. Over time, as production improved and costs dropped, mechanical clocks became more accessible to broader populations, though they remained symbols of status. Clocks became integral to European daily life, significantly enhancing their role in societal structures. In the 16th and 17th centuries, clock mechanisms like pocket watches became everyday accessories, used not only by aristocrats but also by the middle class. Clocks began appearing in homes and markets as consumer goods. Over the centuries, Europe experienced waves of fascination with time accuracy, from mechanical tower clocks to personal devices. As clocks spread, interest in their precision grew. New ideas and methods for improving accuracy emerged, from water-based to mechanical systems. With growing interest in astronomy, time became a critical component of scientific measurements. Observatories in Europe and beyond played a key role in scientific research. Astronomers and scientists began using precise mechanisms to measure time for celestial observations. Clocks became essential tools for accurate calculations in astronomy and mathematics. This marked a significant milestone in scientific history, as time precision was crucial for studying celestial bodies. In the 16th and 17th centuries, clocks began to be used to regulate work hours in production. During early capitalism, businesses recognized the importance of standardizing time to boost labor productivity. This led to the installation of clocks in factories and plants to manage work shifts. Thus, time became not only a personal and social element, but also a critical factor in labor organization. Clocks began to assist not only in measuring time, but also in managing work processes. Since ancient times, the sea has been both a barrier and a pathway, connecting cultures, continents, and eras. However, one major challenge in maritime navigation remained unsolved for centuries: how to accurately determine one's position, particularly longitude. The solution was tied not to stars or compasses, but to time, precise, stable, and reliable. Latitude, the distance north or south of the equator, could be determined using the sun or stars. But longitude, position east or west, was far more difficult. Until the 18th century, sailors couldn't accurately pinpoint their longitude, leading to shipwrecks, disorientation, and loss of life. To determine longitude, one needed to know the exact time at a reference point and compare it with local time on the ship, calculating the difference. Each hour of time difference corresponded to 15 degrees of longitude. This required a reliable portable device that could keep accurate time despite the ship's motion, temperature changes, and humidity. In the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the British government introduced the Longitude Act, offering a substantial reward, up to $20,000, millions in today's terms, to anyone who could solve the longitude problem. The solution came from John Harrison, an English carpenter and self-taught clockmaker. He dedicated over 30 years to creating a marine chronometer, a device capable of maintaining accurate time during sea voyages. After several models, H1, H2, H3, he introduced H4, a device resembling large pocket watches more than his earlier designs. In 1761, H4 underwent a test voyage to Jamaica and demonstrated remarkable accuracy. Despite its success, bureaucracy and scientific biases delayed Harrison's recognition. Only years later, with the personal intervention of King George III, did he receive most of the promised reward. Captain James Cook's second voyage, in 1772-1775, was a triumph for the marine chronometer. Aboard the ship, Resolution was a chronometer, K1, crafted by Larkham Kendall based on H4's design. The device allowed Cook to accurately calculate longitude during the voyage, avoiding underwater reefs and erroneous routes. This enabled the discovery of Antarctica, the correction of South Sea maps, and a successful expedition without major losses. Precise marine chronometers became a critical strategic asset. They enabled European powers to efficiently manage fleets, organize trade, plan military operations, and colonize distant territories. The British Empire, equipped with reliable chronometers, gained navigational superiority, strengthening its influence across many regions. Chronometers were used for measuring and mapping new lands, charting sea routes, and managing supply and logistics. They allowed ships to safely navigate unknown shores, determine their position across vast oceans, and avoid navigational errors that were deadly in the age of sail. Marine chronometers were not only complex, but also delicate. They required regular maintenance, cleaning, lubrication, and protection from the environment. Each chronometer was stored in a cushioned wooden box with a gimbal suspension to absorb vibrations and ship motion. Typically, ships carried multiple chronometers. If one failed, comparisons with others allowed for calculating true time. Before departure, the devices were synchronized with port time, often at observatories, and carefully monitored during the voyage. Interestingly, the advent of precise chronometers created a paradox. Ships had sea time, the time at the starting point, preserved by the chronometer, and local solar time, used to determine noon, for example. The difference between London time and the ship's local time was the basis for calculating longitude. This practice laid the groundwork for the concept of global time, a time independent of location and standardized for the entire planet. In the 19th century, with the rise of railways and telegraphs, it became clear that relying solely on local solar time caused chaos in schedules and communications. For instance, time in Liverpool and London differed by about 10 minutes, complicating train schedules. In 1884, the International Meridian Conference in Washington established the Greenwich Meridian as the prime meridian, marking the start of time zone implementation. However, the idea of dividing the Earth into 24 one-hour zones was proposed earlier by Canadian engineer Sandford Fleming. The introduction of time zones was the culmination of time objectification, where time ceased to be solely personal or local and became a global standard. The longitude problem spurred state investments in science and technology. Besides, Britain, France, Spain, and the Netherlands also sought solutions. Academies and scientific societies were established, observatories funded, and research supported, all in pursuit of precise time. During this period, astronomers and clockmakers became scientific celebrities, individuals capable of not just crafting clocks but measuring and preserving time. This fueled competition among clockmaking schools, particularly in London, Paris, and Geneva. Observatories, like the Royal Greenwich Observatory, became timekeeping hubs. They established precise time by tracking celestial movements, providing the correct time for chronometers before voyages. These practices later led to the concept of Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, with modern GPS and atomic clocks as logical extensions of the chronometric revolution. Marine chronometers transformed the world. They not only enabled safer ocean crossings but also laid the foundation for global time synchronization. From a wooden box on a gimbal to satellite time, the journey began with the desire to know one's position. This was an era when time became navigation, strategy, science, and ultimately civilization. It all started with a small hand ticking on a dial in the darkness of a ship's hold. As humanity entered the industrial era, time ceased to be vague, subjective, or tied solely to natural rhythms. It became precise, measurable, and strictly regulated. In this new world where machines set the pace of life, time accuracy was no longer just a convenience, it was a necessity. One of the first factors demanding strict time coordination was the development of railways. Before trains, each city operated on its local solar time. The time difference between London and Bristol, for example, could be several minutes, and this wasn't an issue. But as trains began connecting cities over long distances, precision became critical. Misaligned schedules posed not only inconveniences but also the risk of disasters, like train collisions on single tracks. To prevent this, railway companies introduced standard railway time. In Britain, for instance, London or Greenwich time was established as the standard. Railways became a driving force in unifying time, first nationally and later internationally. Another revolutionary technology, the telegraph, emerged alongside railways. Messages that once took days to deliver could now be sent in minutes. This created new demands for precise time coordination. Banking transactions, business negotiations, and news reports all required synchronization. Telegraph stations were among the first places where clocks were synchronized with meticulous care. By the mid-19th century, many countries began synchronizing telegraph clocks with signals from major observatories. In 1852, London's Greenwich Observatory transmitted an electrical signal from its tower, synchronizing time with other stations. This was one of the first steps toward global time coordination. Industrialization transformed not only technology but also daily life. Previously, people oriented themselves by sunrise and sunset or seasonal tasks. Now their days were governed by factory whistles. Work hours were measured with minute precision. Being late for a shift could result in reprimands or dismissal. Work schedules, shifts, and time logs emerged. Factories demanded precision and rhythm from workers, a quality once associated only with machines. This created a new sense of time as pressure and discipline. The term time management didn't exist yet, but its essence was already present. The phrase "time is money" solidified during this era, not just a metaphor, but an economic principle. Factories installed large clocks visible from every corner of the workshop. Some businesses even developed devices to track how long workers spent on each task. American engineer Frederick Taylor became one of the first theorists of scientific time management. His methods, timekeeping, labor standardization, and operation time analysis, formed the basis of an entire discipline. This wasn't just control, it was the creation of a new type of person, precise, rhythmic, predictable. The drive to measure everything extended to workers themselves. In the late 19th century, experiments with chronophotography, a technology capturing sequential movements, began. Scientists like Etienne Jules Marey analyzed the efficiency of human motion. These were precursors to modern biometrics and even cinematography. Human labor began to be viewed as a mechanism subject to study and optimization. Timers, chronometers, and cameras were used to find the ideal movement, minimizing time loss. Time became a tool for managing not only machines, but also human bodies. Simultaneously, the mass production of clocks flourished. Previously a luxury, clocks became affordable and widely produced due to mechanization and standardization. Clocks appeared in every home, kitchens, living rooms, and bedrooms. Switzerland, Germany, and the United States became hubs of the clock industry. Companies like Waltham and Elgin in the US produced millions of clocks annually. People grew accustomed to the idea that precise time was not a privilege, but a basic need. A hallmark of this era was the rise of wristwatches. Until the late 19th century, wristwatches were primarily worn by women as fashion accessories, while men preferred pocket watches. World War I changed this. Soldiers found it inconvenient to pull out pocket watches during combat, making wristwatches the standard. Post-war, wristwatches no longer seemed unusual. They became fashionable, prestigious, and practical accessories. Precise time was always at hand, literally. With accumulating technologies, the need for global time standardization became evident. In 1884, the International Meridian Conference in Washington established the Greenwich Meridian as the prime meridian, laying the foundation for the 24 time zones. This decision held both practical and symbolic significance. Humanity adopted a unified concept of time for the first time. Despite political boundaries, we began living within a single temporal system. Many countries resisted, and the process took decades, but the principle was set. Thus, the concept of universal time was born. If centuries earlier clocks were exclusive to the elite, clergy, or engineers, they now became a mass phenomenon. Clocks for all, not just as objects but as symbols. Precise time no longer belonged to the elite, it became part of everyday life. Every individual gained not only a device, but also the responsibility to track time. Time became an internal chronometer, part of personal discipline, a standard to strive for. The industrial era introduced a ubiquitous sound, ticking. It became a symbol of time's relentless march forward. This rhythm defined the day, work, rest, and everything in between. It echoed in bedrooms, schools, and factories. Even in silence, the ticking was in people's minds. Now, a century later, in the digital age, we live in a world where time no longer ticks, but still governs us. The industrial era embedded precision in our culture, with clocks as its silent conductors. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That's how time sounded in the age of factories, steam engines, and progress. And that's how it became part of us, as a duty, a measure, a habit of being on time. While the industrial era subjected humanity to mechanical time, the 20th century opened new frontiers of precision. Time no longer ticked, it vibrated, oscillated, and flickered on screens, moving at the speed of light. This was the era of invisible rhythms, where every moment became part of a global mechanism driven not only by hands, but also by atoms. In the 1920s, a new technology emerged, quartz clocks. Their principle was simple yet revolutionary. When electricity was applied, a quartz crystal vibrated with remarkable stability. These microscopic oscillations replaced the ticking of mechanical gears. Quartz emitted a rhythm inaudible to the ear, but measurable with incredible accuracy. Early quartz clocks were large and used in laboratories. By the mid-20th century, the technology became viable for mass production. In 1969, Japan's Seiko introduced the world's first quartz wristwatch, the Astron. It redefined time, making it even more precise and accessible. A quartz crystal isn't just a stone, it's a physical marvel, a resonator. When electrified, it oscillates at a frequency determined by its shape and size. For example, a standard clock crystal vibrates 32,168 times per second. Electronics divide this frequency into one pulse per second, a tick. But behind this tick lie thousands of vibrations. This stability made quartz ideal. Mechanical clocks could deviate by tens of seconds daily, while quartz clocks lost only a few seconds per month. This precision paved the way for the digital era. With quartz came digitization. The first electronic clocks with liquid crystal displays appeared. Time was no longer shown by hands, but by digits. This wasn't just a style, it was a new way of perceiving time, concrete, instantaneous, mathematically precise. Electronic clocks became symbols of technology and the future. In the 1970s, they were trendy. In the 1980s, commonplace. By the 1990s, nearly mandatory. Clocks no longer needed winding. They were autonomous, reliable, and affordable. Precision became a feature, a norm, an expectation. But progress didn't stop at quartz. In 1955, the first atomic clock, based on cesium-133, was created in the UK. It used the frequency of radiation emitted by cesium atoms as they changed energy levels. This frequency, 9,192,631,770 oscillations per second, was chosen as the standard. From that moment, the second ceased to be an astronomical concept tied to Earth's rotation. It became a physical constant. Atomic clocks are so precise that they would deviate by just 1 second over millions of years. This isn't just accuracy, it's a foundation for everything else. To synchronize clocks worldwide, Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, was introduced in the 1960s. It became the new standard. Unlike astronomical time, UTC is based on atomic measurements, but occasionally adjusted based on Earth's rotation observations. Time services worldwide receive signals from atomic clocks coordinated by the International Bureau of Weights and Measures. Time became a global infrastructure, as vital as electricity or the internet, a unified, shared, neutral time. Why do we need such precise clocks? One answer is GPS. The global navigation system relies on time. GPS satellites send signals with the exact time of transmission. A receiver on Earth compares the arrival times from multiple satellites to calculate its position. If clocks were off by even a millionth of a second, coordinates would be off by kilometers. The Internet also demands precision. Server synchronization requires accuracy to milliseconds. Financial transactions, stock trading, energy grid management, and mobile communications all depend on precise time. Time is no longer just a measurement, it's a protocol. The International Bureau of Weights and Measures, BIPM, in Paris is the hub of this temporal system. It coordinates hundreds of atomic clocks across countries. Observatories and national institutes submit data, which is statistically analyzed to form the International Atomic Time, TAI, scale from which UTC is derived. This is invisible but monumental work. Scientists verify, analyze, and refine, even accounting for signal transmission delays. The result is the second we all use in phones, navigators, and banks. Yet a question arises. How does human perception of time align with these machine rhythms? We feel minutes, sometimes seconds. But milliseconds? Picoseconds? These are abstractions to us. Still, modern civilization depends on them. In a world where machines make decisions in nanoseconds, humans seem slow. A gap emerges. We live in one time while technology operates in another. We still miss meetings, feel boredom or haste, even though our smartphones know time to the microsecond. This creates a philosophical paradox. The more precise our time measurement, the further it is from our lived experience. We're surrounded by precision but don't live by it. Why pursue this? Why measure a second to 9 decimal places? It's not just for GPS or the internet. It's about understanding, capturing, and mastering time. Controlling it. With atomic precision, each new stage in time measurement marks a step toward a more complex civilization. First, agriculture and sundials. Then, mechanics and factories. Now, lasers, satellites, and quantum clocks. This isn't just progress, it's a reflection of our obsession with order, synchronization, and control. The next stage might involve biological or subjective time, where technology aligns external measurements with human internal rhythms. For now, billions of cesium oscillations continue to set the world's invisible rhythm, precise, impartial, cold, yet ours. This is the sound of a new era, not in ticking but in vibrations, not in hands but in light pulses. This isn't just time, it's the foundation of reality. If everything stops one day, atomic clocks will be the first to show it, or perhaps they'll never stop. Time is a concept that constantly accompanies us, yet we often take it for granted. It governs many aspects of our existence, from habits and schedules to emotions and experiences. We're used to measuring time in hours and minutes, but is it possible to perceive it differently? Can we return to a deeper understanding of time, recognizing its complexity and boundlessness? Let's explore the future of time and how it interacts with our perception of the present, our health, and ourselves. Time in virtual reality is an entirely different concept. When we immerse ourselves in virtual worlds, time flows differently. Virtual environments and games, for instance, can create the sensation that time speeds up or slows down. The standard progression of seconds, minutes, and hours in the real world doesn't always align with what we experience in these digital spaces. In virtual reality, time can be stretched or compressed, giving the impression that entire lifetimes pass in minutes or that a single minute feels like an eternity. This altered perception, amplified by digital technologies, prompts us to question how objective is our sense of time, and how can it be distorted depending on the reality we inhabit. Immersion in virtual worlds is just one way modern technology reshapes our perception of time. Another critical factor is our biological clocks, circadian rhythms. We all know certain times of day when we feel particularly energized or fatigued. This isn't random. Our bodies are tuned to cyclical changes tied to the time of day. Mornings bring peak activity, while nights signal rest. Circadian rhythms are internal biological clocks regulating our sleep-wake cycle. Embedded at a biological level, they're synchronized with the external world, particularly the day-night cycle. Recent research has shown that their influence extends far beyond what we consider normal. Disrupting circadian rhythms can lead to sleep disorders, metabolic issues, and even depression. Interestingly, in recent decades, we've increasingly ignored these rhythms, caught in a constant race against time and disregarding our body's signals. We push ourselves to work at night, despite our biology urging rest. The persistent view of time as something we can control has become unhealthy for our bodies. When discussing time as a subjective experience, we can't overlook meditation and mindful time perception. One way to reconnect with the present and restore balance is through mindfulness. Meditation allows us to feel time's flow without trying to speed it up or slow it down. It's about embracing the moment we're in, fully immersing ourselves in the here and now. Meditation frees us from the pressure of time imposed by the external world. It's a return to ourselves, a state where time ceases to be something we must control. In deep meditation, time seems to stop. We can sit for hours without noticing its passage because our focus is on the present moment. This unique state restores a genuine perception of time. Why does time seem to speed up when we're enjoying ourselves, yet drag during moments of boredom or waiting? This is another facet of our time perception. We've all experienced glancing at a clock and realizing, with years with surprise, that an entire day has passed. Seconds and minutes can feel long, but when we're engaged in something captivating, they vanish. Psychologists explain this by how our brain processes events and sensations in a given moment. When we're focused on something new and exciting, our attention is fully absorbed, making time fly. In contrast, when our emotions and sensations are subdued, like when waiting or bored, time feels sluggish. There are two types of time: objective and subjective. Objective time is what clocks measure: seconds, minutes, hours. Subjective time is how we perceive it. Our emotions, state, and environment can drastically alter how we experience time's flow. The same duration in the same place can feel different, depending on our mood or circumstances. In recent decades, philosophical movements advocating a rejection of time, known as the timeless concept, have gained traction. This ideology suggests that time isn't inherently important or necessary. Some philosophers and scientists argue that we create unnecessary pressure by obsessing over time's constraints. Instead of chasing hours and minutes, we should live in the moment, unbound by rigid temporal frameworks. This approach can help us feel freer and reduce stress. This timeless philosophy ties into a cultural trend: the resurgence of analog clocks in a digital age. We live in a world where digital devices like smartphones are integral to our lives. Yet more people are embracing old-fashioned analog clocks, which not only tell time, but also evoke a slower, more mindful pace of life. The popularity of analog clocks is a subtle rebellion against the digital world, where we're constantly tethered to time, divided into minutes and seconds. In a culture filled with notifications and digital reminders, people seek a return to time that resists digital control. Finally, let's discuss ecology and slowed time. In recent years, more people are striving to slow their pace of life, savoring each moment rather than rushing. Known as the slow movement, this trend is gaining momentum. Slowed time isn't just a fad, it's a life philosophy. Don't rush, enjoy the process. It also encompasses mindful consumption and ecological awareness, where every moment is valued and every minute offers a chance to make the world better. Time is more than what clocks measure. It's a profound, multifaceted concept that shapes our perception of life and well-being. We can learn to perceive time differently, slow it down, or ensure it doesn't become a source of stress. Ultimately, time is something we create ourselves. It's the art of living in harmony with ourselves and the world around us.